Good afternoon and good morning to everybody, depending on where you are joining us from, whether from Europe or from across the Atlantic. We are very happy to see you here today. I'm just waiting a couple moments for a critical mass to appear in our participant list. In the meantime, let me introduce myself. My name is Zsuzsanna Vég. I'm a program officer at the German Marshall Fund's Transatlantic Trusts, and I am managing our Reintegration Fellowship program, which is a program that has been running since 2018 and has been supporting the next generation of young analysts, researchers from across Central and Eastern Europe, Central Europe, the new by now, not that new, EU member states, the countries of the Western Balkans, and countries of Eastern Europe and South Caucasus. Our mission with this program is to, on the one hand, support the skill development of young analysts and through that foster and further evidence-based analysis across the region, and through that also contribute to the developments of the think tank sectors of these countries. And we are very happy today to have the launch event of one of our recent Reintegration Fellows policy project. Irina Dobrohorska has been working with us from Ukraine and on Ukraine on the topic, very important topic of veteran reintegration in the context of the war and beyond. So today is our event introduces her policy paper dealing with this topic. And we are very lucky to have my colleague Irina Komiak joining us today from Kiev. Irina is leading our Ukraine Relief, Resilience and Recovery program that has been running since 2022 in reaction to Russia's full-scale invasion in Ukraine. And through this program, we are supporting Ukrainian civil society to deal with the consequences of the conflict and support the relief, resilience, and recovery of Ukraine. I will hand over the floor now to Irina, who will take it from me here and introduce our panelists today. In the meantime, I will put the link to Irina Dobrohorska's policy paper in the chat and encourage you to check it out when you get the time. Irina, then the floor is yours.
Thanks much and welcome everyone. Greetings from Kyiv. At this point, I'm very happy to have at the panel discussion today our colleagues from other organizations also actively working on veteran policies and supporting Ukraine in that matter. Please join me in welcoming Jonathan Rodas. He's a director of projects and programs at Coriolis Institute. And today we have Maria Kudela also with us from Veteran Hub. She is a senior program manager working with veterans in Ukraine. I think from here I will hand over the floor to my colleague Irina to shortly present her paper, and then we will have short reactions from our speakers and some exchanges from Irina as well. And by the end, we will have an open floor for questions and answers from audience. Irina.
Thank you, Irina, for the presentation. Thanks, Zsuzsanna, and thank you, Jonathan and Maria, for joining me at this launch event. I've been working on this paper since 2023, and when I was applying for this fellowship late in 2022, it was just some of the early months of the war underway, and the issue of veteran reintegration was quite acute. And at that time, there were a lot of debates as to what role veterans should play moving on and looking forward when Ukraine will transition to the recovery stage. So I was really interested to look at this social change and the role of veterans, like from the forward-looking perspective. But as I was working on my policy paper, it was a research journey that enabled me to kind of look back at my professional work and the challenges from the government side and some of the contributions from the civil society, and reflect more broadly as to what is it that we're talking about now when it comes to veteran reintegration. How much can one count on the role of veterans once Ukraine wins the war and once the war is over? And how much expectation can one set on veterans after they come back from the service, having endured some of the most complex experiences in their lives? So my policy paper looks at the veteran reintegration more broadly, and also discusses the growing needs and the experiences that Ukraine can offer to the world. And I'm very glad to see that some of my former colleagues who are very active in the veteran reintegration space have now joined. And I think that they may be able to contribute to the discussion and steer some of the questions that I also raised in my policy paper from the practical standpoint. So in my policy paper, I start from the fact of acknowledging that Ukraine is currently combating the full-scale aggression, and the number of soldiers who are currently in the front lines are set to increase to over 1 million, and these estimates of the numbers of how many of men and women will return from service are vary, but it's for sure going to be over 1 million people. And for Ukraine's population, that's about 40 million. It's quite a significant group. At the same time, veteran reintegration is one of the big aspects of Ukraine's national defense and security, and it's quite important to look at the return from the service from the broader perspective as to how Ukraine, as a state that has a neighbor that may also be an aggressor in the future, how is it that Ukrainian defenders and veterans can be sure and can help with the future aggression should that come? So a sound veteran reintegration policy is something that would enable Ukraine to respond better to the future aggressions. The other aspect why veteran reintegration is quite an important aspect of discussion at this point is the social cohesion dimension. Because when one refers to the role of veterans, it goes more broadly also to the acceptance and readiness of the society, of family members, friends, to really welcome our male and female defenders once they return from service. And the whole system should be prepared from the small community levels, at small villages and towns to big cities, with infrastructures, support programs, and also awareness raising aspects, so that when veterans return, they feel that they are valued at home, and the society is also ready to acknowledge the contribution that they have given through their service. Equally, in my policy paper, I look at the institutional framework and how veteran reintegration works in the context of Ukraine, and some of the things that work quite well, but also at some of the aspects that still could be improved. Perhaps for the audience that may not be that much into the topic, I'll just say that Ukraine's Ministry of Veteran Affairs is the key body responsible for the overall coordination and guidance of the veteran policy. It is one of the newest ministries in Ukraine, which exists less than a decade, and compared to the other ministries, it may not be as institutionally sound as others, but the spectrum of its responsibilities is quite broad, which is why it is quite an important task that the ministry has in front of them. At the same time, there are other institutional structures that play quite an important role when it comes to providing support to veterans. And these include Ministry of Social Policy, Ministry of Economy, Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Interior. Even Ukrainian Parliament has a specific committee that also tackles some of the matters when it comes to the role of veterans. And when one looks at this overall group of actors, the Ministry of Veteran Affairs of Ukraine has quite an uneasy task to ensure that coordination across all these bodies happens at the national level. Also, there is another dimension that we may raise later in today's discussion, which is coordination at municipal level and local level more broadly. So one of the issues that has been in discussion in Ukraine, perhaps in the last year or two, is the concept of the new veteran policy and the role of Ministry of Veteran Affairs in guiding this process forward. And the reason being is that Ukraine, as an independent country since 1991, still has a legislative basis for determining who is a veteran, which dates to 1993. And when that legislation was adopted, those veterans who were thought of at that time were not necessarily men and women with the needs that currently are fighting to defend our national sovereignty. So in that time, the needs and groups of veterans have changed. Their experiences also have changed, and some of these aspects have not been properly reflected in the legislative framework. So that is one side of the issue, and also from the conceptual level and from the coordination standpoint, the Ministry of Veteran Affairs has a challenge of really steering the veteran policy forward and understanding what is it that Ukraine currently needs, what is the future looking forward for Ukraine and for the veterans. So in my policy paper, I discuss quite a bit the importance of having a holistic policy on veteran reintegration that would really showcase the leadership of the Ministry of Veteran Affairs, and which will really try and tackle some of these historical changes with adding more clarity on the needs of veterans and the expectations and the ability of the state to respond to these challenges. But also my policy paper looks at some of the realistic solutions of what is it that Ukraine can currently do in the given context. So even though Ukraine currently faces a full-scale invasion, there are some good success stories. And when it comes to veteran reintegration, I think one of the big aspects is that Ukraine can provide some lessons to the rest of the world. And it is now for our state, for our policymakers to really showcase that we are fighting this war, but we're also having some good examples to share. For instance, digitalization is one of the success stories in how veteran reintegration processes were aimed to be simplified for veterans and their family members. And Ukraine, being known as a digital and tech-savvy state, also integrates this into responding to the needs of veterans. And this is one of the cases that we could and we should amplify perhaps further. At the same time, there are a lot of things that can still be researched from the perspective of employment and bringing veterans back to the labor market as they come back. Also, there is a lot of prospect to further research the psychological and psychosocial support and some of the correlations between combat experiences and return to services. And this is something that Ukraine can also further look into. And of course, once the big concept of veteran policy materializes and some of the learnings will be integrated into the policy level, I think that the issue of veteran reintegration has a big potential to really demonstrate the readiness and some internal reflections as to how Ukraine and its society is ready to acknowledge and welcome our defenders in the current context. So I was trying to look into all of these aspects in my policy paper, and I also undertook a trip to Denmark and engaged with the Danish Veteran Center and looked into their structure. So in my paper, I also provide a bit of a comparison between some of the Scandinavian experiences and Ukraine. But my overall main point with the research paper is that perhaps when looking at the reintegration of veterans in future, I think Ukraine can make a good case to the rest of the world. And I think this discussion today is one of the opportunities in steering some of these points further. And I'm looking forward to discussing some of the specific aspects that may be of interest to the group. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Irina, for sharing the insights and some of the snippets of the paper you wrote. And I encourage everyone to also have a look at the paper. The link has been provided in the chat as well. And now I think I'd like to turn to Maria first and then to Jonathan. Maria, could you please share from your perspective of civil society actor on how the reintegration of veterans is going on from this side, and also with the long-standing experience that Ukraine already has on this. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I would like to thank Irina for her paper and her work because, as she already mentioned, the issue of veteran reintegration is essential even while we are at war, and we need to start preparing the policy and legislation for the influx of the veterans that we will have once the demobilization is underway. But even now, some of the veterans are leaving the force, the armed forces, due to several reasons. And we need to provide the support for them to return back to the civilian life and to support their needs. And also, so the issue of veteran reintegration is actually really important on the systemic level of the national defense, and also at bringing back the veterans as part of the society and further recovery, because they will be a part of developing Ukraine further. And if we have the national policy that actually addresses their needs, the veterans will make a choice to stay in Ukraine, or other people further down the line will make a choice to join the armed forces because they will know that they will have the support returning back. And also, and I think it's really important that Irina also highlights it, that we need to look at the families of the veterans as the beneficiary of the veteran policy, because it is actually really important to the veterans, and we know it from our research and our day-to-day interactions, that their families are taken care of while they're at service and also when they're returning back. So as to where we currently are with the reintegration processes, I think that Ukraine has made, and Ukrainian government has made several important steps lately. At the end of 2024, the strategy for veteran policy was adopted, and it largely relies on the cooperation also with the civil society and with the providers of the services and the people who directly interact with the veterans daily and understand their needs. I mean, there is still room for improvement and for further development on this strategy, but I think that we now see that the Ministry of Veteran Affairs and the Ukrainian government are really taking this issue seriously and are trying to create this system and and the new modernized system and not the previous one that was developed and inherited actually from the USSR. Yeah, that's it from me. Thank you.
Thanks much, Maria. Now I think we'll turn to Jonathan. Maybe you can share some of the insights on the paper and some of your views on this from an international perspective too.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much for having me on this panel. It's a great pleasure. So yeah, thanks for the warm reception, and thank you, Maria, for your remarks, and Irina for your fantastic presentation and the very intriguing research on the subject that you have produced in the past 2 years. And I wanted to expand on one specific aspect that I think is especially momentous and has a special transformatory potential for the field of veteran integration in Ukraine, which are the digital services and tools that Irina also touched upon in her presentation. So the state of the affairs is that many offers have been developed by several stakeholders in the field as of now. So as you know, there's like a growing number of electronic services and innovations like the e-veteran app, of course, the DIA app that was mentioned, which already provide services like, a digital veterans ID, digital certificate for veteran family members, or family members of the deceased, and disability certificates, and also, of course, the fairly recent Army Plus and Reserve Plus apps, which all have the purpose to simplify the experience of navigating the sometimes dizzying military bureaucracy for current service members and also veterans, and with a goal to have the first digital army, as they say. So I guess like the big looming question is how do we best seize the opportunities that this digitalization provides? And I think there's a couple of low-hanging fruits, which are just to increase the awareness about these platforms and their offerings. As surveys, or many different surveys, have shown that it's not always the case that veterans know that they exist, or what they may know about the existence of the app, but they don't know that there's a specific function within them that they can leverage. Then, of course, increased trust in these apps. I know that has been a particular concern with the uptake of the Army Plus app, that a lot of service members were actually not, trusting the data security of the app. So, there's a lot of PR work that has to be done on that, and also probably technical improvements, and also like just the general fixing of technical issues in the digital infrastructure is also like sort of low-hanging fruit to improve the user experience, right? But I think the more general outlook here is that the infrastructure is there, and there's many capable agencies and people who are like behind this infrastructure. So that's the big success story that Irina has been talking about. But what we now kind of have to focus on is like tying together the threads to use them most effectively. And I think like one big aspect of this is to increase the synchronization and the data exchange, not only between different applications, because as you heard, there's many different ones by the government and civil society, but also between military and civilian records held across different ministries. So one aspect would be unifying registers a little bit more, harmonizing them, and the other aspect would also be like integrating more data at different points of a veteran's trajectory, and doing so across digital applications, and also receiving then more tailored support as a veteran across these applications. So that could be, for instance, already documenting medical and deployment history, position held in the armed forces, the family and income situation, while a veteran or a service member is still serving or starts serving, right? And I guess like one big advantage of these apps is that they're also not only tools to deliver a user experience to veterans, but they're also a tool to collect data where records are incomplete. So the underlying spirit of all of this would be that reintegration planning for every veteran should begin on the day of their enlistment, basically. And in this particular example, that can happen in the form of a new digital record that is being constantly updated. So overall, improving the record keeping and tailoring services and offers better to a veteran's needs based on this improved record keeping not only enhances the user experience for veterans who, for instance, will have better oversight, won't have to navigate so much bureaucracy, and it will also improve the utilization of services, but it also saves money, lots of money, because essentially it reduces waste on bureaucracy. It reduces waste on legal fees, on unused services, and it also allows in general for a more efficient budget allocation due to better demand monitoring, which services are actually needed by veterans, where should the money go to provide these services specifically, and where should the money go can also be taken in a very literal sense, where are veterans located, in which rural communities are they, where are the services needed, and monitoring these individual profiles from the day that service starts is more effective to assess these needs over time than, for instance, a one-off survey in the DIA app, as it has been recently announced by the Ministry of Digital Transformation. And I think this holistic data integrity and harmonization approach would also do more justice to something Irina also highlighted in her paper, which is that it enables the support system to better differentiate, service profiles of veterans, right? Because they're quite a diverse group. So as you know, the nature of their service is different. The duration of the service is different. There's active duty veterans, there's non-active duty veterans, there's some that have it or experienced having a disability and so on, right? So it just enables to create a system that is more ready for a reintegration system or a reintegration process that is happening in the times of an ongoing war, and that also has to accommodate a very vast range of different veteran profiles and backgrounds. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks much. And before passing the floor to Irina to respond to the comments, I would just like to say that for our audience, you can ask questions or post your comments in the Q&A box, and we will get to that in due course of the discussion. Irina?
Thank you, and thank you, Jonathan and Maria, for your comments. Let me start with responding to Maria and the importance of family members in the reintegration process. Indeed, I think, especially with the full-scale invasion, the discussions around veteran reintegrations have become maybe more acutely focused on the importance of family members, as those are the ones who have the first and most direct contact with a veteran, and it can be spouses, husbands, minor children, parents, and quite often these are the people who are also quite engaged in helping Ukraine's defense efforts, in volunteering. So considering that they are also undergoing quite significant psychological challenges, and also provide support to their direct family members who are veterans, it is quite critical to also think of the necessary support programs and acknowledging the important role that they play in the safe and sound return of our defenders back home. So that's one point. And also on the points that Jonathan raised on digitalization. In fact, colleagues from IREX, and when I was at IREX, we've been working quite a lot on launching the e-registry for veterans. But from the professional experience, one of the challenges that was faced was cybersecurity. And with the full-scale invasion, when it comes to integration of these different registries that are tied to other state institutions, it would be really, really important to ensure effective cyber measures so that no personal data could be compromised and effective protection would be embedded there. And it obviously takes time, but if done in a good way, this is definitely the case that Ukraine can further showcase to the rest of the world. And most importantly, this is something that veterans can benefit from once they return from service. And a couple of other points also on the fact that one should work on reintegration of veterans from the day one when they join the service is definitely, I think it's very much applicable to Ukraine context. And also looking at this from the legal perspective, just to note that in Ukraine, one does not become a veteran upon discharging from service. Actually, the legal definition suggests that one can obtain a status of what we call in Ukrainian participant in hostilities, or in Ukrainian it's учасник бойових дій, while they are still in an active duty. So that means that a state and society does have this responsibility to start preparing for their return once they join the service, once they receive this status. And my understanding is that that legal definition that we currently have does not have a minimum term of how long the duration of the service one should undertake to receive this status. There are some certain criteria to do that, but once you fulfill those, you can be an active duty soldier and still be considered a veteran and still be entitled to receive all of the support that you may need. So definitely a valid point here, and also, especially under the martial law, the eligibility for the veteran status basically applies to all who are defending Ukraine's sovereignty, and the status can be obtained basically at any time. And in terms of the issues and the budgetary correlations, when I was preparing for today's presentation, I was thinking, like, what are the key issues in the current context? And I had 3 in my list. One was the public finance management and budget coordination, because veteran reintegration and the responsibility to coordinate policy that is there does require quite a lot of budgetary coordination. And this is perhaps one of the points for the ministry and policymakers to work further, as there are from time to time, there are new programs that are being launched at Ministry X or Y, but a state also needs to understand how much finance goes into that, how much will it cost the state budget, and will any of those policies actually benefit veterans? So I think moving forward, like looking at the aspects of public finance management and veteran reintegration does have a lot of room for work. And the other 2 issues or challenges, I would say, is institutional capacity, because with the full-scale war, there are so many institutional challenges across different governmental agencies at the national level and also at the local level. So the Ministry of Veteran Affairs does have this uneasy task to also face the challenge of an institutional limitations and lack of people, staff who can effectively work on all of these aspirations that are there for a veteran reintegration, and this is something to be acknowledged. And most importantly, coordination is still quite a big challenge, and that can be horizontal coordination across the governmental agencies and institutions responsible for veteran reintegration, but also horizontal and vertical when it comes to local communities, Hromada levels, and national policy levels as well. So yeah, I'll leave it here, Irina.
Thanks much. I see the questions coming in already in the Q&A box, so I do encourage more of them to come in. I probably start with a few questions from my end as well. And I think the first question would be more to Irina and Maria, but Jonathan, if you have a comment, please feel free to also jump in. To your opinion, what are the challenges for veterans and their families when it comes to psychological support? Perhaps there are other methods and approaches that can be used or promoted to support the reintegration and adaptation processes. Maybe some educational, professional leadership trainings, because while psychological support and mental support to that matter can be one of the keys, but we also cannot state that this is the universal thing that works for everyone. How do you see the development and the direction of this process? Irina, Maria, whoever wants to respond first.
Yeah, I can probably start. Yeah, so in terms of psychosocial support, as we have already mentioned during this discussion today, it is the important context for veteran reintegration and family and veteran support is that currently we have the context of the ongoing war, and it shapes the context of the transition and of the support that the beneficiaries, veterans and the families may need. So because they have to navigate the sometimes the physical aftermath and consequences of participating in combat and adjusting to the new reality, which brings on the emotional challenges as well. And also, when we're talking about the families, it is important to understand that the war has been going on for the full-scale war for 3 years now, and the families have been separated for that period of time. So it brings on also the psychosocial support in terms of the family as a whole. However, there are still several systemic level probably challenges because even though mental health support and seeking this support has been more common recently and has been promoted both on the national and individual level in the recent years, there's still some stigma attached to seeking support, especially when it comes to veterans. And here, I believe that peer encouragement can work as one of the approaches because it is also about the trust in the system of mental health support and trust in the individual who and the civilian oftentimes can support and help you with the psychosocial challenges you may be facing. And additionally, there's an unequal access to the services with which Jonathan has also highlighted already. So in the rural areas, there's less access because there's just fewer providers. So here actually also digitalization may be one of the tools which can help in the it is not a systemic level approach and something that can change the issue on the bigger scale, but still it can be a valuable resource for some. And I would also like to maybe highlight that reintegration is the two-way street. So veterans return to their communities, and it is essential for the communities to be open to the veterans and to support their reintegration, because it is our also job as a society to welcome back the veterans that are returning home.
Thank you so much. Irina, do you have anything to add, or perhaps Jonathan?
Maybe I'll just add that the role of civil society organizations, including the one Maria represents here today, has been quite critical in filling some of those gaps, and more so before the full-scale invasion and during full-scale invasion. There have been quite a movement of veteran unions and small and bigger civil society organizations that try to address some of these challenges. And where state has some issues, this is where CSOs do step in quite effectively.
Thanks much. Yes, Jonathan, please go ahead.
Yeah, just thank you for these reflections. I just wanted to pick up on the point that Maria made on communication and trust, and sort of this destigmatizing mental health and psychosocial support. And I think like one important aspect of like this trust building, in an environment where, seeking this kind of support is already, sometimes subject to social norms and social pressures, etc. I think especially in that environment, it is very important to train mental health and psychosocial support professionals to specifically interact with veterans, which is a very a different type of experience, right? Being, for instance, a military psychologist versus a regular psychologist. So there needs to be this form of preparation of the professionals themselves. But I think another aspect of this is actually to train bureaucrats, to interact with veterans and their families in trauma-informed manners, and to kind of avoid common bureaucratic frustrations that families feel, and then like become disenchanted with the system and not seek support, right? The point I want to make is that it's not only important how the professionals themselves interact with veterans and their families, but also how the first points of contacts, in the local governments and in the communities, how they interact with veterans, because that may actually be, the crucial, decisive point whether they're gonna, take up the service and get mental health and psychosocial support or not.
Thanks much. Those are true valid points, because this is also one of the ways how to build in trust, because people usually talk to people, and if you see this sensitive communication as well, it sort of helps with reintegration and also sort of contributes to the two-way street approach. I do have another question on also kind of relates to communication, but we see the ongoing strong and consistent support to Ukraine from its allies and international partners, including on the state level, on this level of societies as well, and local communities. Now I think I will start with asking the question to Jonathan, and then if there are reflections from Irina and Maria, totally welcome. How do you see, like, what is the involvement of the international community to the shaping of expertise, policy recommendation, and exchanges on veteran supports? And how did this cooperation change since 2014, and if? And I think I would just also kind of add to this one of the questions from the audience. How do you see the exchanges from Ukrainian side to the international community, both when it comes to some of the military experience, because as we know that Ukrainian army is the active army and has active experience of actually fighting the war, but then it comes to veteran policies as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for this question. So I think, yeah, without a doubt, the international community has played a huge role in the field of veterans reintegration. So I think like the key word here is capacity building. For instance, by NATO to modernize, the Ukrainian armed forces, to adjust reintegration policy closer to Euro-Atlantic standards, which also have influenced then the creation of the Ministry of Veterans Affairs in 2018, not least because Irina Fritz, the first Minister of Veterans Affairs, had actually a background in NATO related parliamentary work. So and I think even more important than that, there was like this huge strengthening of post-Euromaidan Ukrainian civil society, and among them were hundreds of veteran-led ones, veteran-led CSOs that emerged. And kind of reflecting back on the developments since 2014, I would say like that the biggest change it has been that Ukrainians have started taking more leadership and agency themselves. So, for instance, government bureaucracy has partially rejuvenated and innovated. Ukrainian veteran supporting and veteran-led CSOs and philanthropic foundations and so on have organizationally matured, or a lot of them have, or let's say the amount of organizations that are organizationally mature in that sense, has just drastically increased. And that kind of shows the highest possible return on investment, right, of this capacity building. For instance, through the post-2014 Ukraine Support Act by the Obama government, and I think like organizations like Razom or Nova Ukraine are just living examples of this legacy, which is something very, very nice to see. So overall, I would say it has evolved more towards a horizontal relationship of partners serving partners rather than like a donor recipient dynamic. And I think like connecting also to the question of from the audience, I think like this has, or let's say, this horizontality has also enabled Ukrainians, both civilians and people from the military, to articulate their experience in different ways, right? Because as you rightly pointed out, they're the ones who fight the war. They're the ones, who are defending their country, right? And let's say through this development that the partnerships have horizontalized, they're now just able to articulate their needs based on this experience in a much more confident manner. And my experience in the field has been that this is pretty much respected. Of course, there's room for improvement. I'm going to talk about that in a second, but yeah, it has evolved towards this partner serving partners dynamics, which is led by Ukrainian priorities. And I think like the reason that this happened, this development is the vigor of Ukrainians themselves, who have always been keen on getting involved in the development of this transnational civil society, and also constantly apply the lessons learned together with our partners, right? And I'm talking both about civilians and military personnel, veterans working in this sphere. But again, as I was already pointing out, challenges do remain. So the recent US retreat was, of course, a huge drawback because over millions of dollars of funding were gone from one day to another almost. And of course, there's also still challenges with, aligning funding with local needs, right? It's not perfect yet that, donors from several, allied countries will always funnel money into the priorities that are defined by Ukrainians, and that's still something that has to be improved. I'm just saying, there have been very positive developments, but still, like in program and policy design, I think we still have to give an even bigger priority to basing funding allocation and donor priorities on priorities on the ground. And of course, there also have been, not just from the side of the US, but in general, international actors, problems with funding inconsistency, which of course also affects, for instance, Ukrainian civil society on the ground who want to take advantage of these partnerships. But the bottom line is the more we strengthen support systems and inter-organizational coordination in Ukraine itself, the better Ukrainians and Ukrainian veterans themselves can articulate their systemic needs to the international community. And I think that is the great way forward.
Thanks much. Maria, Irena, do you have any inputs to this?
I'm happy to jump on the point about the donor coordination and the importance of further donor involvement. This is something I also slightly touched based in my paper, but I think now with the retreat of the US, it is a great momentum for the international community to really step in and see how and what are the niches that may be supported, because there are so many strong civil society organizations that operate in this space, including Veteran Hub that is present today, that have been heavily affected by these developments. And it is important to really understand and coordinate that support and see how the experiences of the countries or the programs that they represent may help with filling these gaps. But also, having worked on the other side, I can attest that there have been some challenges from the perspective of the policymakers, because some of the efforts from the ministerial level in coordinating these donor initiatives have not been, I would say, have not been always smooth and effective. And this is the space where some of the improvements can be achieved in terms of really trying to bring international support together, laying out on the needs and getting that support for veterans and helping the state essentially to reintegrate veterans. So it's going to be quite an uneasy year for the sector in general, but also for the veteran reintegration as well. But we're also witnessing how businesses have started to step up and supporting veterans. And again, I'm talking a lot about Veteran Hub, but this is a great example of how businesses united when they saw a big issue with a significant gap. So perhaps this is something that can be studied further as a case for understanding where some of these challenges could be addressed as well. Thanks, Irena.
Thanks much. Maria, do you have any reflections on this?
Actually, I think Irena and Jonathan summarized all the main points.
Perfect. Then I have another question from my end and a few from colleagues who are listening to us. I would just again remind that if you have any questions or comments, please type in the Q&A box and we will get to them. My question is also in the perspective, so when we talk about reintegration of veterans to civilian life in Ukraine, we also can talk about Ukraine's ongoing EU accession and how to build or set the background for this aspect of broader social cohesion, so to say, inside Ukraine and also Ukraine's experience into the EU. How do you have any ideas or thoughts on this? I assume that this is still a question to the future, but as we all work on current and further issues at the same time, perhaps you have some views to that.
To my awareness, I'm not sure whether there is any tangible point with regard to EU accession and veteran reintegration necessarily, but there is certainly a dimension of workforce development and strengthening Ukrainian economy and making Ukrainian economy sound and prepared for the accession. And I think this is the space where veteran reintegration and the efforts of Ukraine's Ministry of Economy with regard to the EU accession become quite key, because veteran reintegration does cover so many aspects, and Ministry of Economy have been trying to also work on this from their wheelhouse. So ensuring that not only Ukrainian labor market is prepared for the EU accession, but ensuring that it is inclusive towards different groups of citizens, and they can also either find an employment that they aspire or return safely to their workspaces where they used to work before joining the service, would be an important aspect also for strengthening Ukrainian economy at large, I would say. So this is the only side of the aspect that I can think of for now. But as you said, from the broader social cohesion, it is quite key to also look at the issue and tackle all the dimensions that may be there.
Thanks much, Jonathan.
Yeah, thank you for these reflections, Irina. I also have like a slightly different perspective on this, or like how veterans fit into the picture of EU accession. And I would kind of think about, you know, the role not only that veterans take on in Ukraine's reconstruction and economy, but also in Ukraine's politics, from the local level up to the national level, right? And I think like one aspect when we look at this through this kind of strength-based reintegration approach, like what are veterans' inherent qualities that they bring to civilian life that we need to leverage to reintegrate them holistically. One thing that often comes up is, you know, their sense of duty and their sense of justice and fairness, right? Which are all qualities that, you know, you would want to see in a politician, right? And there's also other aspects of this, which is a lot of veterans have had very, very sort of sometimes life-changing experiences with, you know, bureaucratic corruption sometimes that, you know, there has been stories about, you know, preferential access or to like benefits, you know, through certain channels, or you know, problems in the military bureaucracy that were linked to this, right? So it's also kind of the experience of with like existing systemic shortfalls, right? Not only talking about corruption, but also talking about, you know, the overall coordination of efforts, right? Which they experience so viscerally firsthand, right, through their integration policy, that I think they bring a lot of very good qualities that, you know, with the right policy and programming approaches, can be leveraged to transform Ukraine's political landscape, and, you know, have veterans as well lead in, you know, future governance or justice system reforms and anti-corruption efforts, right? Which are all relevant aspects to EU accession.
Thanks much. I can say that there are already some veterans working in the National Agency on Prevention of Corruptions at the current days. So I think that that returning to professional life that also includes the political area is an ongoing process. And I think that we will face with it equally when it comes to veterans and also volunteers and some other civil society activists who've been active during the full-scale invasion and accommodating all of the experience in and shaping the future of Ukraine's development. Thank you so much for this. Maria, do you have anything to add on this? Okay, then we still have a question. We actually also had a question on the veteran reintegration on political life, but I think we partially covered it. We do have another question from our audience, which is, what is the future of the paper? And Irina, do you plan to cooperate with the Ministry of Veterans on this? And I will add a small remark from me on this question as well, because we know that there are some departments that involve working with veterans in different ministries at the same time, like in the Ministry of Defense, in the Ministry of Economy. How do you see potential cooperation on this further?
Thank you, Irina. On the future of the paper and cooperation with the Ministry of Veterans, so just beyond the GMF engagement, I work for an international consultancy, Adam Smith International, which is based in London. And we've been also trying to re-engage with the Ministry of Veteran Affairs to see how we could step in with some of the work. So my personal intent is to really try and push on some of the knowledge that I have now and some of the expert support that I've gained through the GMF community at my work, and see if we can also coordinate better with the Ministry of Veteran Affairs. And I was just in Kiev last week. We're trying to meet the newly appointed Deputy Minister of Veteran Affairs, who will be leading some of the work on donor coordination and digitalization, but he was very busy, but I hope we will still meet, and as he's quite proactive and used to also work in the donor funded space before. So this is one way, but unfortunately, the representatives of the Ministry of Veterans haven't joined the launch. So I think we will try to find a way to really share some of the insights from the paper with them and see if if there are any points that may be of use to them, and then identify how they could materialize through some more tangible support. I would say that way. That's my intent. What was the other question? Can you remind me?
So basically that was on the cooperation of different departments within ministries on the issues of veterans, and I think the cooperation in between departments and Ministry of Veterans, but at the same time with civil society organizations working on veterans, how to go through all the tensions that can still arise on this. Perhaps maybe then Maria can also add on that from the civil society perspective.
Yeah, maybe I'm not the best person to really respond to this question, as I don't really work for the ministry or around the ministry, but clearly there is an expectation that the Ministry of Veteran Affairs, with their mandate, should take the lead and work on improvements of coordination of efforts. Maybe Maria and Jonathan have some of the views from their side of things.
Thanks much. Maria?
Yeah, I mean, it's just as Irina has said, that the ministry should take the leading role and be the main body that coordinates all the other stakeholders involved in supporting veterans and actually in implementing the policies that are specialized for the different areas, because I mean, it is important that the veterans receive support in each and every field of their well-being, in health and in employment, and they fall under different departments or ministries, but there should be one body that employs the role of the coordinator of the policy and steers the strategy on what is the best way to support the veterans.
Thank you. Jonathan, do you have anything to add on this?
No, nothing in particular. These were all very good points. I know that this has been a bit of a black box to me so far, because I know about these stories of sort of jealousies among ministries, almost, about who does what and who takes the lead. But it's a bit of a black box for me as someone who's not Ukrainian, as to like how these scenarios actually play out. And I can just mirror the points of, there needs to be, better coordination, and picking the point back up that Irina made earlier as well. I think budgetary coordination or enhancing budgetary coordination is also a very important part. I'm not aware, like, to what extent the MOVA has planning capabilities when it comes to the budget, but my assumption would be, you know, the budget is giving to the individual ministries and they execute programs with the budget, right? So it's not as centralized, but since, you know, the shortage of, you know, budgets in this entire context has been so crucial, I think budget coordination is really an important point to keep in mind when we talk about better horizontal integration between ministries.
Thanks much. And I think partially to this, it also includes some of the motivation from all parties included to set the cooperation to have the capacity also to keep it going. And recently, from also talking to some veterans, I do have a question exactly on this and motivation, especially when it comes to local levels. Perhaps you have also some insights to share. So when veterans come to their rehabilitation or reintegration processes, they sometimes use these tools or the services available for them at a sporadic manner. And this is not still like a systematic approach. How do you see it from your experiences? Perhaps, Maria, you can share more on the activities of Veteran Hub, how to keep the community active or more active, or how to approach this, and also perhaps from the side of their families, how to deal with this further.
Yeah, I think it's somewhat of an issue that veterans not always know what services they can utilize and what support they are eligible for or they can turn to. Yeah, also in Veteran Hub, we and it also comes back to the point about the accessibility of the services, actually, that we have the mobile offices because some of the veterans they just are not able for variety of reasons to come into the bigger cities, for example, for to use the services. So it is important also to come to them. Of course, also when they have this need and they request the support, but also it is one of the ways is to just make sure that the community knows that there is the support system. For example, the smaller community in Kyiv Oblast, because then they can share this information with the veteran, because not always veterans have the resources to do the research or just to know that they would need support. So it is, I believe that it is important to make sure that the community can also support the veteran in finding these resources and actually using them. Yeah, and if they know, for example, that there is the mobile office of Veteran Hub or other civil society organization that can take a call and come to see the veteran and provide services on psychosocial support, mental health support, or I don't know, some legislative support, they can share it. And I think it's a great way, this community-based support.
Thanks much. Jonathan, and then probably Irina.
Or Irina, if you want to go first, if you have a point in mind. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Maria, for these great reflections. And yeah, I think like one important dimension here is that at the end of the day, reintegration happens at the community level, right? And we're using at the Coriolis Institute, and others use it as well, this kind of catch-all term of community-based reintegration policy, right? And I think like, yeah, again, like this kind of approach is already exemplified so well in Veteran Hub, and also like some offerings of the Ukrainian Veterans Fund, for instance. And yeah, like expanding on Maria's point, I think one big job would be to just expand, or to universalize these anchor points and focal points that veterans can find when they get back to their communities. And to just give a concrete example of what that could look like, or what work in the area looks like currently, there's this initiative called the Community Support Center, which was established by the NGO Space of Opportunity, and in partnership with the All Ukrainian Association of Communities, and also the International Renaissance Foundation, also a big player in the field, as you know. And they basically, they claim they're working with, all almost 1,500 romadas to guide them with different kinds of resources, so expert guidance, policy tools, and digital resources to kind of show them how to even build a local veterans program, how to open a veterans space. So basically what Veteran Hub does, but with the vision in mind that every local community in Ukraine would have exactly that, or several of these focal points. And this is basically a way to ease the experience for veterans, of course, because it's supposed to make it easier for them to know where to go. The referrals should be streamlined. Communication with the very diverse set of stakeholders providing services should be eased with that. And I think it's also just a way to build capacities that help consolidate the responsiveness and the to veterans' needs, and the ability to make decisions within local communities. And I think that's the best way to approach it, because that's where the needs are placed. And to connect back to the whole digitalization aspect, there's also a very useful tool that has been provided by the three organizations working on this, which is the chatbot of the Community Support Center. So yeah, it's basically a chatbot, that they can offer that works with needs assessments and then referrals directly for veterans, right? So it's a simple digital tool that can be easily replicated at a low cost across many communities, and that can just transform the way that veterans are received there.
Thanks much, Irina.
I think Maria and Jonathan covered most of these points really well, and I think that the civil society organizations have indeed stepped in quite a lot in many of these aspects. So yeah, no further points on my end.
Thanks much. I also would like to thank the audience for their involvement and active status. I think that now I'll pass the floor to Irina for some final remarks before wrapping up our session, unless there are some other final questions or... Okay, I don't... there is one question in the chat. What is the role of the private sector, especially social businesses, if this segment has been envisaged in Ukraine? We touched upon it briefly, but maybe Irina, you can elaborate a bit on this.
Yes, actually, some of the businesses have been participating in some training programs for example, for adapting their HR policies to veterans who may be returning from service, or ensuring that their workspace would be appropriately prepared for veterans' return. So there have been quite an effort to this point. And again, civil society organizations, together with some Ukrainian big companies, have been working on ensuring that veterans would be ready to return for the workspace. And this is something that was actually taking place also pre-full-scale invasion. It's just now with the full-scale invasion, I think what is happening is that businesses of different scale would have to really acknowledge the fact that some of their employees would be veterans, and their life experiences may be somewhat different. So not only that would require an understanding of the benefits from the legal perspective, but also preparedness to welcome them back into the workspace. So there are some tailored events and available resources for those. And I think some of them can even be found on Veteran Hub's website, from what I recall. Thanks, Irena.
Thanks much. I would. Okay, there is another question in the chat, but I think that would be already the last one. To your knowledge, is there a coordinating effort underway at World Bank or NATO or something else to direct foreign investment international veteran reintegration campaign?
Not to my knowledge, but I think there's quite a lot of discussion currently, like across major funders, as to what are the priorities for them to pick up in terms of the things that got cut with the US involvement in Ukrainian space. But having engaged with some of the parties mentioned here, I haven't heard specifically about the investment into the veteran reintegration campaign. But what I also know is that some of the international funders like IOM, Council of Europe, Folke Bernadotte Academy, some of whom also get bilateral support from their government, they have been more actively involved in the veteran reintegration. But and NATO as well, I know that they do have some ongoing work on this. But from the World Bank perspective, not that I'm aware, to be honest.
Thanks much again to our audience for being active. I will now pass the final word to you, Irena, before wrapping up, and then take the final word. Thank you.
Thanks, Irena, and thanks everyone for steering this discussion. I hope that some of the points that we've highlighted today were new to you and provoked some further thoughts and reflections. And I also wanted to thank some former colleagues from IREX who have been quite active in the chat. And indeed, I would agree that things evolve very actively in Ukraine. And even when I was working on this policy paper, I would write one thing and a couple of months, the developments would evolve. So I would need to rewrite and redraft. So forgive me if some of the things have evolved and I haven't been able to properly address them up to date. But I think the most important point that I do want to make out of today's presentation is that the matter of veteran reintegration is a top priority that has been spoken by Ukraine's president. It is acknowledged also by the society, also given the scale of defenders who are currently fighting for our sovereignty and independence. And it is the responsibility not only for policymakers, but also for citizens of Ukraine to find ways to be involved and understand how we can support defenders in coming back and what are the ways for communicating with them, for ensuring that they have access to services, so that once Ukraine wins this war and once this war ends, we can transition to a peaceful future, appreciating the effort by our defenders who have been fighting for all this time.
Thank you so much. From my end, I would also like to say thank you to Jonathan, Maria, Irena, Zuzana, and the team who made this presentation possible, for the insights shared from the local perspective, from the international perspective, from the civil society lens. And I do agree with Irena that there is a lot of things going on and we still have a lot of things to work on. For better, or I wouldn't say for worse, but for better, there are a lot of actors who are actively engaged in the processes, and this is very inspiring and encouraging also from Ukrainian perspective, from the donor perspective, from the civil society end as well. And I do wish that this dynamic remains, and all of the innovative ways and approaches that Ukrainians are inventing and testing at the same time will find also the response within the international community and within the policies, recommendations, and also EU accession processes. On this, I would also just add and encourage our audience to follow our work, especially Rethink Fellowship in the social media channels, as we are having some more of policy papers and presentations coming up in the upcoming months. And the next one would be on gender-based violence in the context of war, countering and responding to it. And this would be also presented by Irina's colleague, Halina Kotluk. She's also a fellow and a researcher of the Rethink Fellowship. And from my end, also taking a personal advantage opportunity, I would say that we do support Ukrainian civil society organizations and independent media, especially in the ongoing full-scale war. And this has been and still stays the pleasure to work and to get the inspiration and motivation from all of the actors on the ground. And I think that this is one of the ways that keep us all moving to the victory and to all of the work that is yet to come afterwards to do. Thank you very much again for being active, for finding time. And yes, you can find us anywhere if you have any further comments or questions on this particular paper or on any other work on Ukraine. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It was a great pleasure. And yeah, thank you to everyone who participated.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.